When the Voxari pissed off humanity by slaughtering an entire human colony in a cowardly sneak attack, they were about to learn just how bad an idea it was to anger the only species in the galaxy that nuked its own planet over politics and religion. Captain Scott Morris jumped out of his bunk as alarms blared through the USS Retribution. He threw on his uniform and sprinted to the bridge, barking, "Report," before the door even finished opening. His first officer, Commander Lyra Holt, looked up from her console. "Sir, we've lost contact with the colony on Sigma 9. Their last transmission was a distress signal." She played the garbled recording filled with static and panicked voices cut short by explosions. Scott clenched his jaw. Over 5,000 innocent civilians lived on that colony. "Set a course, maximum burn, and put the ship on combat alert." As the crew scrambled to battle stations, Scott opened a comm channel to Space Fleet Command. "Admiral, the Sigma 9 colony has gone dark, requesting permission to investigate. Over." Admiral Jameson's haggard face appeared on screen. "Bloody hell, not again. Permission granted, Captain Morris. Find out what the devil is going on out there. The Voxari have been making noise lately. I don't like it. Keep me apprised. Jameson out." As the Retribution tore through hyperspace toward Sigma 9, dread knotted in Scott's gut. Tensions with the arrogant Voxari Empire had been heating up for months now as they built up their war fleets along their borders. The Voxari looked down on humans and considered them a primitive, violent species not worthy of a place on the galactic stage. Scott feared this could be the spark that finally ignited the powder keg. The moment they dropped out of hyperspace near Sigma 9, the stench of death hit Scott like a punch to the face. The orbital defense platforms were shattered ruins. Debris from demolished ships tumbled in the vacuum. He swallowed bile as his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kurtz, reported grimly. "I'm picking up massive energy signatures consistent with Voxari plasma warheads, sir. The colony, it's gone. Wiped out. 5,243 men, women, and children. Murdered." Scott's vision turned red with rage. Humanity had spent decades keeping the peace, not rising to the Voxari's provocations and slights. That ended today. This heinous act of war would not go unanswered. He would ram the Voxari's treachery down their throats, and they would choke on it. No matter what it took, Scott vowed he would have justice for those butchered innocents. He activated fleet-wide comms to all nearby human ships and colonies as he broadcast images of the carnage. "This is Captain Scott Morris. Moments ago, the Voxari Empire launched an unprovoked genocidal assault on Sigma 9, slaughtering thousands of civilians. We cannot let this stand. I call on every human who believes in justice, in protecting our right to live free of tyranny, to join me now in stopping those murderous zealots before more of our people die. Today, we fight back. We will hit them with the righteous fury of Earth itself. When humanity rises up as one to defend our homes and our families, nothing in this galaxy can stop us." As the human ships rallied around the Retribution and made ready for battle, Scott gritted his teeth. The Voxari had unleashed the wrath of humanity upon themselves, and they were about to pay a terrible price for their arrogance. Back on the USS Retribution, Scott paced the bridge, his mind racing. The interrogations of the few surviving colonists painted a grim picture. Their stories aligned. A covert Voxari strike force had hit the colony hard and fast. The colonists stood no chance against the ruthless efficiency of the attackers. Lieutenant Kurtz called out from his station. "Captain, I've analyzed the weapon fragments we recovered. The energy signatures match known Voxari plasma rifles, but there's something else. These weapons were enhanced, far beyond standard Voxari military gear." Scott frowned. "Enhanced how?" "Increased output, improved targeting systems. These are specialized weapons, sir, used by elite units or assassins," Scott finished, a cold realization washing over him. "We're dealing with a pro here, not just some random Voxari squad." An alert blinked on the comm officer's console. "Sir, priority message coming in on a secure channel. It's intel on the Voxari operative believed to be behind the attack. Scott leaned in as a dossier appeared on the main view screen. A menacing Voxari face stared back at him, all sharp angles and cold, merciless eyes. Zarin, Scott read. A real piece of work, wanted in connection with a string of assassinations and unauthorized military actions across the quadrant. The comm officer continued, latest reports place him at a Voxari outpost near the Cygni system. He's allegedly overseeing preparations for an imminent attack on human space. Scott smacked his head against the console, the metal creaking under the impact. If we can get our hands on this bastard, we might be able to stop the invasion before it starts, and make him pay for Sigma-9. He turned to his crew, dedication etched on his face. Kurds, Thompson, Vega, you're with me. We're going in quiet and fast. I want Zaron alive if possible. The more he can tell us, the better. As the team geared up and boarded a stealth shuttle, Scott's mind was already light years ahead, plotting every possible scenario. They had to succeed. The fate of humanity might very well depend on it. The outpost loomed before them, a dark, jagged blot against the starry backdrop. Scott and his team moved silently through the dimly lit corridors, the only sound the soft clicks of their weapons and the occasional guttural exchanges of Voxari guards in the distance. Vega, their tech specialist, disabled the security systems with a few deft keystrokes, allowing them to slip deeper into the facility undetected. As they approached the central command room, a voice drifted out. Zarin's, Scott realized with a flash of anger. Don't care about the diplomatic fallout, Zaron was saying, his tone sharp with impatience. The humans are weak. We should strike now while they're reeling from Sigma-9. Another voice responded, distorted by the comlink. Scott recognized it as Rigel, the Voxari ambassador. We must be cautious, Zaron. If we act too rashly, we risk uniting the human factions against us. Stick to the plan. The invasion will begin soon enough. Scott signaled his team. They burst into the room, weapons drawn. Zaron spun, his eyes widening in surprise. His guards reacted immediately, diving for cover and opening fire. The room dissolved into chaos, plasma bolts scorching the air. Scott rolled behind a console, popping up to take aim at a guard. Thompson and Vega laid down suppressing fire, giving Scott a clear shot. In the confusion, Zaron made a break for it, dashing towards the exit. Scott cursed and sprinted after him, ducking and weaving through the firefight. He chased Zaron through the twisting corridors, the Voxari's footsteps ringing out ahead of him. Scott pushed himself harder, his lungs burning. He couldn't let the bastard get away. They emerged into a hangar bay just as Zaron leaped into a small fighter craft. The engines roared to life, the ship already rising from the deck. Scott made a split-second decision. He ran forward and launched himself at the craft, grabbing onto the edge just as it cleared the hangar's atmospheric shield. The icy cold of space hit Scott like a sledgehammer, stealing the breath from his lungs. He pulled himself into the cramped cockpit, coming face to face with a snarling Zaron. The Voxari lashed out, his fist connecting with Scott's jaw. Scott tasted blood but struck back hard, driving Zaron against the control panel. The ship spun and bucked, careening wildly through space as they traded blows. Zaron was strong, his Voxari physiology granting him an extra measure of power. But Scott was driven by something more, the memory of Sigma-9, of the lives brutally cut short. He fought with a savage dedication, landing punishing hits to Zaron's face and body. He pinned the Voxari against the bulkhead, his forearm pressed against Zaron's throat. Why? Scott demanded, his voice raw. Why attack Sigma-9? What is Zorgax planning? Zaron laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. You humans, always so arrogant. You think you can stand against the might of the Voxari Empire? He grinned, his teeth stained with dark blood. Sigma-9 was just the beginning, a taste of what's to come. Scott pressed harder, his vision swimming with rage. What's the plan, Zaron? What's the end game? Zaron's eyes glittered with malice. Zorgax has a weapon. something beyond anything you humans can imagine. When he unleashes it, your pitiful colonies will fall like leaves in winter. A warning klaxon blared through the cockpit. Zarin barked out a harsh laugh. You're too late, human. This ship is set to self-destruct. You'll never stop what's coming. Scott slammed Zarin's head against the bulkhead, stunning the Voxari. He scanned the control panel frantically, searching for the self-destruct override. But the countdown had already begun, the seconds ticking away with merciless speed. With a final surge of desperate strength, Scott hauled Zaron's unconscious form towards the escape pod. He punched the release button and shoved the Voxari inside. Just as the pod jettisoned, the fighter craft exploded in a blinding flash of light and shrapnel. The force of the blast sent Scott tumbling through space, the air leaking from his suit in a hissing stream. He fought to remain conscious, clinging to the fleeting hope that the retribution would find him before the unforgiving vacuum claimed his life. It felt like an eternity, floating in that infinite black expanse. But then, when Scott was on the very edge of oblivion, a bright light pierced the darkness. The Retribution's rescue shuttle, he realized with a surge of relief. After they dragged him aboard and tended to his wounds, Scott wasted no time in relaying Zaron's dire revelations to his crew. The mood on the bridge was grim as the implications sank in. The Voxari weren't just planning an invasion. They had a weapon that could potentially wipe out humanity's presence in the galaxy. Scott knew they had to act fast. They had to warn Earth, rally the human colonies, and prepare for the fight of their lives. And they had to uncover the truth behind this mysterious Voxari weapon before it was too late. As the Retribution set course for Earth at maximum burn, Scott couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before the storm. Zaron's capture and the intelligence they'd gathered had bought them some precious time, but Zorgax would not take this setback lying down. Across the stars, in the heart of the Voxari Empire, Emperor Zorgax seethed with fury as he received word of Zaron's failure and capture. His talons gouged deep furrows into the arms of his throne, his eyes burning with a cold, merciless light. "So the humans dare to challenge us?" he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "They will learn the folly of their defiance." He turned to his assembled war council, the most ruthless and cunning minds in the Voxari military. "Prepare the fleet. Accelerate the weapons deployment. We will crush the humans before they have a chance to muster a defense." As the council scurried to carry out his orders, Zorgax turned his gaze towards the star-filled viewscreen, a malevolent smile twisting his lips. The humans had no idea what was coming for them. By the time they realized the true scope of his plan, it would already be too late. The die was cast. The Voxari war machine was on the move, an unstoppable force hell-bent on grinding humanity beneath its iron heel. And at its head stood Emperor Zorgax, his heart filled with dreams of conquest and the utter subjugation of the galaxy. The final battle was brewing, a cataclysmic clash of civilizations that would echo through the ages. The future of humanity and the fate of the stars themselves hung in the balance, and Scott Morris and the crew of the USS Retribution would find themselves on the front lines, fighting with everything they had to ensure that the light of human freedom was not extinguished forever. The news of Scott's daring mission spread like wildfire across human space. Civilians and military personnel alike rallied behind the crew of the USS Retribution, their actions a beacon of hope in the face of the Voxari threat. Scott stood before a sea of screens in the Retribution's command center, his face bathed in the glow of countless tactical displays. Reports flooded in from every corner of human-controlled space. Colonies fortifying defenses, shipyards working around the clock, civilian vessels being retrofitted for combat roles. "We've got the Orion Defense Fleet reporting in," Lieutenant Kurtz called out. "They've doubled their patrol routes and are requesting additional support." Scott nodded, his eyes never leaving the strategic overview. "Tell them we'll redirect the 7th Flotilla their way. We can't leave any of our outlying systems exposed." As the crew worked tirelessly to coordinate humanity's defenses, Scott couldn't shake the nagging worry about Zaron's final words. What kind of weapon could the Voxari possess that would make them so confident? In the ship's science lab, Scott huddled with a team of Earth's brightest minds. They pored over fragments salvaged from Zaron's fighter, each piece a potential key to unlocking the mystery of the Voxari's plans. Dr. Elena Chen, head of Xenotech Research, held up a twisted piece of metal. This alloy, I've never seen anything like it. The molecular structure is incredibly dense, yet it weighs next to nothing. Scott leaned in, examining the fragment. Could it be used for some kind of shielding? Possibly, Chen replied, her brow furrowed. But if they can produce this on a large scale, it could revolutionize starship construction. We'd be completely outclassed. Their discussion was interrupted by a priority alert. Scott rushed to the bridge, where a holographic projection of Rigel, the Voxari ambassador, flickered to life. Captain Morris, Rigel drawled, his reptilian features betraying no emotion. I understand you've been spreading some rather alarming rumors about my people. Scott's heart made. They're not rumors, Rigel. We know about the weapon. What is Harbinger? Rigel's eyes narrowed. Harbinger? I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. Perhaps your recent ordeal has left you confused. Cut the crap, Scott snapped. We intercepted your communications. We know you're planning something big. For a moment, Rigel's composure slipped, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. But he quickly regained his cool demeanor. Captain, I assure you, any perceived threats are purely a product of human paranoia. Now, if you'll excuse me. The transmission cut off abruptly. Scott thumped his hand on the console. Damn it, he knows something. Across the vast expanse of space, in the opulent throne room of the Voxari capital ship, Emperor Zorgax raged at his assembled war council. Incompetence! He roared, hurling a datapad across the room. It shattered against the wall, scattering fragments of advanced Voxari tech. How did the humans manage to capture Zaron? And now they dare to question us? A nervous general stepped forward. Your Majesty, we've accelerated our invasion plans as ordered. Our fleets are moving into position as we speak. Zorgax's eyes gleamed with malice. Good. It's time we showed these upstart humans their place in the galaxy. Rigel. The ambassador materialized on a nearby screen, looking decidedly uncomfortable. You failed me for the last time, Zorgax hissed. Return to the homeworld immediately. Your replacement will handle the humans from now on. Back on Earth, Scott found himself in the heart of humanity's war effort. The United Earth Defense Council had convened an emergency session, and the atmosphere crackled with tension. Admiral Zhao, a grizzled veteran of countless conflicts, pounded his fist on the table. We can't sit back and wait for the Voxari to strike. We should hit their homeworld now before they can use this weapon against us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, but Scott stepped forward. With all due respect, Admiral, we don't know enough about their capabilities. A preemptive strike could be exactly what they're waiting for. So, what do you propose, Captain? The question came from President Chen, her eyes sharp as she evaluated Scott. Scott took a deep breath. A covert mission, deep into Voxari space. We gather hard intel on this Harbinger project, then we can plan our defense accordingly. The room erupted into heated debate. Some praised Scott's caution, while others decried it as weakness. But as the arguments raged, reports began flooding in from the outer colonies. Voxari ships spotted in the Epsilon sector. We've lost contact with Outpost Gamma 3. Multiple skirmishes reported along the Orion arm. President Chen raised her hand, silencing the chaos. It seems the decision has been made for us. Captain Morris, you have a go for your mission. Godspeed. Within hours, Scott had assembled his team, the best of the best, combat specialists, tech experts, and covert ops veterans. They gathered in the hangar bay of a state-of-the-art stealth ship, its sleek black hull designed to slip past even the most advanced Voxari sensors. As the team made final preparations, Scott addressed them. I won't lie to you. This mission is as dangerous as they come. We're heading into the heart of enemy territory, and the fate of humanity may well rest on what we discover. but I couldn't ask for a finer group of men and women to have at my side. With a chorus of determined nods, the team boarded the ship. The hangar bay doors slid open, revealing the star-studded expanse of space. Scott took his place at the helm, his hands steady on the controls. "All right, people," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Let's go find out what the Voxari are hiding." The stealth ship glided silently out of the hangar, quickly disappearing against the backdrop of space. Their mission had begun, a desperate race against time to uncover the truth behind the Voxari's ultimate weapon. As they penetrated deeper into enemy territory, Scott and his team engaged in a series of daring raids. They hijacked Voxari comm relays, infiltrated supply depots, and narrowly escaped detection by Voxari patrols. Each operation brought them closer to the truth, but also increased the danger of discovery. During one particularly harrowing encounter, Scott's team found themselves pinned down in a Voxari outpost. Plasma fire sizzled overhead as they took cover behind alien consoles. "Cooper, we need that data now!" Scott shouted over the din of battle. Staff Sergeant Sarah Cooper, their tech specialist, furiously worked her equipment. "Almost got it, Captain. Just need another minute." Scott popped up from cover, laying down suppressing fire with his pulse rifle. The air crackled with energy as Voxari troops advanced on their position. "We don't have a minute," Scott yelled back. "Rivera, Chen, covering fire. Everyone else prepare to fall back." Just as the situation seemed hopeless, Cooper let out a triumphant cry. "Got it! Downloading now!" The team fought their way back to their ship, the stolen data a precious cargo. As they made their escape, Scott pored over the intel they'd gathered. His blood ran cold as he began to piece together the true nature of the Harbinger project. Their final push led them to a heavily fortified Voxari research station. The team knew this was their best chance to uncover the full scope of the Voxari's plans. Infiltrating the facility proved to be their greatest challenge yet. They navigated through a maze of security checkpoints and automated defenses, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the Harbinger project. In a vast chamber filled with pulsing energy cores and ominous machinery, Scott and his team finally confronted the terrible truth. Holographic displays showed planets withering under the assault of an unstoppable force, entire worlds rendered uninhabitable in a matter of hours. "My God," Scott breathed, horror etched on his face. "They're not just planning an invasion. They want to destroy everything we've built, force us to surrender or die." Alarms blared as the facility's security systems finally detected the intruders. Scott's team fought desperately to secure the critical data that could save humanity. "Fall back to the ship," Scott ordered as Voxari reinforcements poured into the chamber. "We've got what we came for." The retreat became a brutal running battle. Scott watched in anguish as members of his team fell, buying time for the others to escape with the vital intelligence. As their ship broke free from the research station, Scott clutched the data module containing the secrets of the Harbinger project. The cost had been high, but now humanity had a fighting chance against the Voxari's doomsday weapon. With Voxari pursuit ships closing in, Scott plotted a course back to Earth. The information they carried could turn the tide of the war, but only if they could make it home in time. Scott's hands shook as he piloted the stealth ship back towards Earth. The weight of their discovery pressed down on him like a physical force. He glanced at the data module containing the horrifying truth about the Harbinger. "How many?" Lieutenant Kurtz asked quietly. Scott knew what she meant. "Too many. Chen, Rivera, Cooper." He swallowed hard. "They gave everything so we could bring this back." As they approached Earth, urgent transmissions flooded their comms. Scott steeled himself and opened a channel to Central Command. "This is Captain Morris. We have critical intel on the Voxari weapon. Patch me through to the Defense Council immediately." Minutes later, Scott stood before the grim-faced council members, the stolen Voxari data projected behind him. Gasps and curses filled the room as the true nature of the Harbinger was revealed. "Those bastards!" Admiral Zhao growled. "We need to hit them now before they can use this monstrosity." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, but Scott stepped forward. "With respect, Admiral, A preemptive strike could be exactly what they're counting on. We need a strategic defense, buy time to find the Harbinger's weaknesses. The debate raged for hours. Outside, news of the Voxari's genocidal plan spread like wildfire. Crowds gathered in streets and spaceports, their fear turning to outrage. In labs across human space, scientists and engineers pored over the stolen data. Dr. Elena Chen, her eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights, pointed to a complex energy signature. This could be our way in. If we can disrupt the dark matter flow here and here. On the front lines, human fleets clashed with the advancing Voxari armada. The USS Dauntless shuddered as Voxari energy weapons tore through its shields. "A hull breach on Deck 7, a crewman shouted. Captain Sarah Jensen gritted her teeth. "Seal it off, all batteries, concentrate fire on their lead ship." A final, desperate attempt at diplomacy unfolded on a neutral station. The Voxari ambassador Rigel stood before the human delegation, his reptilian features betraying no emotion. "The terms are simple," Rigel hissed. "Unconditional surrender. Your species will serve the Voxari Empire or be eradicated." President Chen's eyes narrowed. "And if we refuse?" Rigel's mouth curled into a cruel smile. "Then Earth burns first." Chaos erupted as security forces swarmed Rigel. "You orchestrated Sigma 9! Scott shouted, grabbing the ambassador's scales. "You played us from the start!" Rigel laughed as he was dragged away. "Fools! The Harbinger comes for Earth. You're already too late." With time running out, Scott gathered a ragtag fleet in Earth orbit. Retrofitted civilian ships stood alongside battered military vessels. "This is our last shot," Scott addressed the assembled crews. "We hit the Voxari hard and fast. Locate the Harbinger and shut it down. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone we've lost." A chorus of determined voices answered him. The human fleet surged forward, engaging the Voxari armada in a series of lightning raids. Scott's voice crackled over the comms. "Bravo, squadron, hit their flank. Charlie, pull back and regroup." The space around them lit up with weapons fire. A human frigate exploded in a silent fireball. Voxari ships fell to carefully aimed strikes, exploiting weaknesses the scientists had uncovered. "There," Scott's sensor officer called out. "Energy readings consistent with the Harbinger. It's on their flagship." Scott's mouth said in a grim line, "All ships cover us. We're going in." The human assault team cut their way through the Voxari ship's hull. Alarms blared as they fought down twisting corridors. "This way!" Scott shouted, following the growing energy signature. They burst into a massive chamber filled with pulsing dark energy. Voxari scientists scrambled for controls. Guards opened fire. Scott dove for cover, shouting orders to his team. "Take out those emitters, don't let them activate it." A fierce firefight erupted around the Harbinger's core. Scott watched in horror as the weapon's energy levels spiked. "It's powering up. We need to shut it down now." With a desperate lunge, Scott reached the main control panel. His fingers flew over alien symbols as Voxari energy bolts sizzled past. With a final wrenching motion, he triggered the emergency shutdown. The Harbinger's core pulsed once, twice, and went dark. Outside, the human fleet pressed their sudden advantage. Voxari ships, reeling from the loss of their superweapon, found themselves outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. Scott staggered back to his ship, exhaustion and elation warring within him. They'd done it. They'd stopped the Harbinger. But as he watched the Voxari armada retreat, he knew this was only the beginning. The Voxari would be back, and humanity needed to be ready. Scott stood on the observation deck of the USS Retribution, his eyes fixed on the retreating Voxari ships. The taste of victory was bittersweet, tinged with the acrid smoke of burning hulls and the knowledge that this respite would be brief. "Captain," Lieutenant Kurtz's voice crackled over the intercom, "we're receiving urgent transmissions from Central Command." Scott's mind focused as he strode to the bridge. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Admiral Zhao's grim face. "Morris, we've intercepted Voxari communications. They're not backing down. Emperor Zorgax is mobilizing every ship in their core systems. Scott leaned over the tactical display, studying the incoming data. Red icons swarmed across the map, a tide of Voxari reinforcements converging on their position. "We need to hit them first," Scott said, his voice low and intense. "A preemptive strike, right at the heart of their empire." The plan came together in a flurry of strategy sessions and heated debates. Scott stood before the assembled fleet commanders, outlining the audacious assault on the Voxari homeworld. "This is insanity, Morris," Commander Reeves pounded his fist on the table. "We barely survived the last engagement." Scott met his gaze unflinchingly. "If we don't act now, there won't be a next time. We end this, here and now." The jump to Voxari space was fraught with tension. Scott paced the bridge of the Retribution, every muscle coiled tight as a spring. As they dropped out of FTL, the Voxari homeworld loomed before them, its orbital defenses jam-packed with weaponry. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then all hell broke loose. "All ships, engage!" Scott barked. The human fleet surged forward, energy weapons lancing out to strike the unprepared Voxari defenses. The initial shock of the assault gave them the edge, but the Voxari recovered quickly. A wall of plasma fire erupted from the planet's surface, engulfing the human vanguard. "Bravo Squadron is gone," Kurtz reported, her voice tight with stress. "Delta and Echo taking heavy losses." Scott gripped the arms of his command chair, watching as friendly icons winked out one by one. "Press the attack. We need to get boarding teams onto that flagship." The Retribution shuddered as it plowed through the debris field, shields flaring under the constant barrage. Scott led the boarding party himself, mag boots clanging against the deck as they prepared to launch. "Remember," he shouted over the din of battle, "we take Emperor Zorgax alive if possible. He's the key to ending this war." The boarding pod screamed across the void, slamming into the hulking Voxari flagship. Scott's team burst out, pulse rifles at the ready. They fought their way through twisting corridors, the air thick with ozone and the screams of the dying. "Command center should be 2 levels up," Sergeant Dex called out, checking the schematic on his wrist computer. A Voxari energy bolt sizzled past, leaving a smoking hole in the bulkhead. They pressed on, each step bought with blood and tenacity. The throne room doors loomed before them, sealed tight against the intruders. "Breach charges," Scott ordered. The explosion rocked the ship, and they poured through the opening. Emperor Zorgax stood at the far end of the chamber, his scaled features twisted in a snarl of defiance. Behind him, a pulsing orb of dark energy sat on a raised dais, the Harbinger weapon. "It's over, Zorgax," Scott said, his rifle trained on the Voxari leader. "Surrender, and we can end this madness." Zorgax's laugh was cold and cruel. "Fool, did you think we'd stake everything on a single weapon?" He gestured to the Harbinger. "This is but one of many. Even if you destroy it, our vengeance will scour your worlds clean of life." Scott's blood ran cold at the implications. Before he could respond, Zorgax lunged for a control panel. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "What have you done?" Scott demanded, grabbing the Emperor's arm. Zorgax's eyes gleamed with malice. "I've ensured that even in defeat, the Voxari will have their revenge. This world will burn, taking you and your pathetic fleet with it." Scott's team scrambled to disable the self-destruct sequence, but it was too late. The ship began to shake violently, cracks spreading across the deck plating. "Fall back!" Scott shouted, dragging Zorgax with them. "Everyone to the escape pods!" They fled through the disintegrating flagship, the hull groaning around them. Scott's pod launched just as the Voxari homeworld erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, the shockwave buffeting them as they raced back to the Retribution. In the aftermath, Scott stood once more on the observation deck, surveying the devastation. The Voxari capital was gone, reduced to a field of asteroids and debris. But the war was a long way to go. "Sir," Kurtz approached, her uniform singed and torn. "We've received a communication from the Voxari ambassador Rigel. He wants to defect." Scott's eyes narrowed. Patch him through. If he knows where the rest of those Harbinger weapons are hidden, we might just have a chance. As Rigel's reptilian face appeared on the screen, Scott steeled himself for the battles to come. The true test of humanity's determination was only just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.